So we're going to continue with some of the evidence and finds and some more information pertaining to the first artifact video I ever posted, which was actually entitled The Lost Silver Mines of Pennsylvania, or The Legend of the Lost Silver Mines of Pennsylvania. And I'm going to show you the connections and how the Susquehannock are connected to these Indian silver mines as being the proprietors of these mines. So this is a part where one of my favorite subjects, the part of researching all this stuff, the anthropological side, where you look at the earliest maps of the area, the earliest written accounts of the first settlers, and you try to see if any of the stories are backed up by things that you're finding. And if these stories are matching up with some of the archaeology, then it lends credence to some of even the legends in these stories. So first of all, the legends of the silver mines of Pennsylvania, or the lost Indian silver mines of Pennsylvania, is a well-known legend that you can look up online. It originated apparently from some French fur trappers out towards the Allegheny forests, going towards the Ohio Valley River. While camping, they ran into a trapping and hunting party for the Susquehannocks, and one of the Susquehannocks dropped a satchel, and out popped all the silver and gold ore. The story perpetuated. It got somehow brought back to Europe. It got brought back to Europe in the early 1600s. And the story was so well known to certain groups that certain groups in Germany came over. And when they came over and settled in the area of Germantown, Philadelphia, which is in the Wissahickon Valley, the information they got from the people that returned led them to believe that there was a gold or silver mine in the Gorgas Run, which is Wissahickon, in between modern-day East Falls and Roxborough, is where this part of the Wissahickon Valley lies. And there's still, to this day, the Lost Gold Mines of Wissahickon. There's a plaque up there you can visit. You can read about the history of it. They didn't really find what they were after because they were in slightly the wrong creek. Not too far off, though. And the reason they were in the wrong creek is because the only information they really had to go on was information brought back by French fur trappers in the late 1500s. They said they befriended a tribe and traded beaver pelts with them, because that's why everyone was over here for the beaver. And they traded for guns, pretty much, and they got a vast amount of pure silver and gold ore for any weapons or metal weapons and guns, anything that they could chalk up, and beaver furs. So the Native Americans would get the beaver furs to trade for more guns. And we already know the Susquehannock, they were the only tribe really that had cannons, and they had guns, and they were well armed with guns, trading with the Dutch and the French before the English and John Smith encountered these people at the source of the Chesapeake Bay. And he also described them as being giant, athletic, tall, and having many, many skills in stone, metalwork, same as they're described by everyone. That leads us to the written evidence of where my collection comes from. And I'll reveal that because you can't go back there, you can't dig. It's a preservation, finding things on the surface, hobby collecting, not for resale purposes. You can't dig back there. You'll go to jail. I'm just trying to answer the legend, and I most certainly think I have, based on the things I found. And it's been a 10-year journey. I've been researching, learning, teaching myself stuff I didn't know, as much as digging through archives. And I came across the oldest encounter of this area by some Swedes that established a a homestead or two along the Huntington Valley area, along the along the Pennypack Creek. And my collection comes from a creek known as the Pennypack Creek, which is just as big of a watershed as the Wissahickon, with winding, branching tributaries that come off of it. But what is different about the Pennypack is how much more unique the geology is in this area. The geology here supports there being gold or silver, unlike the Wissahickon Valley. So we start finding artifacts made of native silver, still in ore form, but definitely ceremonial type arrowheads, bigger pieces. We find amalgamations, knives made of crudely smelted nickel and gold, and even older tools that seem to be heat treated. So I think they were heat treating their stone tools for a long time, and they gradually came upon seeing that some things were unique, or it was part of the culture of the Susquehannocks that we didn't know. We knew that one half was genetically Mohawk, the other half came from a group on the other side of the Great River, either the Ohio or Tennessee River or the Mississippi, and they could have come from the Adenas, the great mound builders, because a lot of their customs, the Susquehannocks, their burial rites and rituals, their pottery and slipware, resembles that of Mississippian Native American culture, which has a strong undertone of Mayan influence to it as well. You even have a town called Miami, Ohio, that was a stronghold for a group of Native Americans that may have been related to the Susquehannocks. So we also, Miami is a Mayan word, and their connections might go much deeper. After that civilization fell around 500 to 1000 AD, and remnants started fleeing this falling civilization, same time period the Mayan civilization collapsed as well, ironically. Offshoots of these tribes may have migrated over the mountains, the Appalachians, and come down into the Susquehanna Falls and assimilated with a group of Iroquois known as the Mohawk in the upper and lower New York area and down in through northwestern PA. Eventually finding themselves at the falls of Susquehannock, they traveled down the Susquehannock, got into tributaries such as the Wissahickon, and eventually found their way to where the Pennypack is. The Pennypack and Wissahickon are connected by several tributaries, and this is where I found their entry point. And interestingly, the French story and the reason the Germans were here looking for gold was because they said it was in a watershed stream system not far from an area they call Acadia. Acadia is a well-known area that became Arcadia. There is a big college there. It is right in Cheltenham. And right behind that flows a connector stream, Sandy Run, and a tributary of it, connecting the Wissahickon to the Pennypack. And the valley that it runs through is a township, or a town known as Orland, O-R-E-L-A-N-D. And the reason it's called Orland is because it is loaded with limestone and lead deposits. And then Limekiln Pike runs right past it because the quarried limestone went into the mule carts and went right up Limekiln Pike, where it ended at the lime kilns up near Plymouth White Marsh and Plymouth Meeting Mall. There's still a few of the old furnaces or the kilns there. But this is very important because where lead and limestone meet and iron ore and quartz meet, that's where gold and silver is, and all your other precious metals. Not to mention the limestone or soapstone was extremely important to the natives in its own sense. So was quartz, and there's a lot of garnets in the area as well, jadites. The geology gets more and more unique as the stream winds towards the Pennypack's main artery from the Wissahickon. And I believe they were already versed in finding silver, because the Susquehannocks also had another encampment around a place they now call Silver Mine Park. It's out in Lancaster Valley, which was a stronghold of the Susquehannock, and they had a stronghold right near there. I think it's called Piquet or Piquet County. I forget the exact county in Lancaster, but you can look up Silver Mine Park, and the Susquehannocks seemed to know what silver was and gold was for a long time, and they seemed to know its trade value. It was a commodity for them. So it was the soapstone and the beaver, and they just pushed. And when they found this area, they used a couple tools. We find these unique tools made out of unique materials that Susquehannocks used. They used magnetite. It's a very hard stone to work with. I found hammers, little tiny tools, and I believe these things were actually rudimentary ways to find the ore they were after, because they were also used as primitive compasses, and I believe they used these in their aid to help them find where these veins were. And so the artifacts, I start finding gold and silver artifacts, both heads of Nephilim, or head pendants. The head was a very sacred symbol to the Iroquois. They even have a flying head legend in their myth. And remember, the Susquehannocks, half of them come from an Iroquois bloodline, even though they themselves as a people hated and warred with the Iroquois and the Algonquin, more so the Iroquois. They decimated the Delaware tribes and pushed them out towards Jersey. But what we see in the evidence in the archaeology is a full-scale industrial site, preforms, an arrowhead factory, essentially, mining tools, picks and axes and hammers. In the land along these deposits, if you look up in the hills, you just walk and look visually that there are old mining cuts and paths, and one of the creeks that flows down into it, coming from the silver mine, one of the lost entrances I found that's been caved in, actually flows into the Pennypack. But this is not a natural stream cut. It was a quarried limestone and agate cut, and you can see that there's a massive amount of activity back in there, and a lot of silver and gold and precious type metals coming from this area, along with beautiful agates and rubitite / garnet type stones. So it's sad to say, but they were a warlike, extremely intimidating group. They assimilated people for purposes of slavery, purposes of taking more wives. Those they found useful, they put to work in these mines, most likely. And I don't believe it was a huge, large-scale thing, because I know that they showed these French, though, a few of the entrances, and these early settlers left some clues behind. We even find a little tobacco pipe from that time period right nearby, and one time after a large rainstorm, we went back there, and part of a bank under this large, I call it a trysting tree, this old, big, bent tree that stands separate from the rest, and its root systems, a lot of it got washed out. And there was a cache of artifacts that came out of that, some axes, and then there was this really weird big rock covered in dirt that had a lot of sparkling going on, but looked like a skull almost. So I came home and cleaned it all up, and it's this, and it was heavy for its size. It's this, and I have lots of pictures in this video. It is gold, super rich gold ore running in limestone and quartz through the back of it. The front along the bottom ended up being an ancient masonic type trail symbol in their guide that the Spanish and French actually use. It's still used today. Literally, these three markers actually mean 3 points along running water, and the different shapes signify that it is an old Spanish symbol for gold-rich ore or silver-rich ore. The middle symbol means mountain, the thing that looks like an upside down 7. The little triangle within it means there is something valuable buried at the foot of a high point. The mount, and then there's 2 other marks that were made by a metal tool in the front of this big piece of gold, silver, ore, and quartz. These are marking the 2 high points, High Point East and West in the area, and the line bisecting them is the stream, and the stream is running to the triangle, which matches the little triangle inside the upside down 7, which shows you that's the foot of the hill where something valuable is buried. Now, when I started cleaning up, there's other recessed triangles to the right that have faces of skulls carved in them. Some are still very detailed. This is another Masonic symbol that also means either booby trap, danger, or that there's burials. So this is what drew us to concluding where we could find the silver mine. Once we realized there were 3 markers along this creek where this stone was found, and all the markers lined up, and we used Google Earth for that with the rock. When oriented correctly, we realized it was a map stone left under a well-known place to lead them back to the silver mines that were so hidden that even that close, they needed direction. So it was left for when maybe they returned, so they could return to the area. That is my guess. Took a lot of research figuring that out, because it's obviously been intentionally marked with a stone or by a very sharp metal tool, such as a pickaxe, to make these geometric shapes to form some kind of symbols on this stone. There are large chunks of silver, lead, ore. There are artifacts of native silver, like I said before that. But the other anthropological research is the Susquehannocks were described by those early accounts of the pennypack and the Swedish people that lived, the early settlers that lived along the stream that named it pennypack after the Algonquin word penapeka, which means slow, dark, dead water that flows uphill, or dead, dark, slow-moving water. This stream is sacred to all the tribes because it is born from the earth. It is a well, spring-born stream, so it was venerated. That leads, and it's also titled, leads to the Delaware. It was sacred, these dark pools. I believe through the artifacts and how some were oriented that they worshiped these pools for some spiritual reason. But there is a couple street names. There's a street named Turwood that runs through the heart of the area. Turwood, I researched that word. It's a weird word. What is in the name of a street, right? Well, Fetter's Mill, the oldest mill in the country, possibly the oldest building in the country. Its original foundations, early 1600s, before the Pilgrims got here. Fetter, F-E-T-T-E-R, it was Fetter's Wood, which over time they cut the F-E-T off and it just became Turwood. A shortened abbreviation. The French did that a lot with things. They shortened things. So that name stuck the whole time. The road eventually becomes Fitzwatertown Road. So the stories got brought back and got carried on, and that street name became that street name carried on by the French because it's in a French iteration of Fetter to turn it into Turwood. We know that the context and the original name of that road came from them. So we know that they encountered his mill, and he was German, and he got the story back to his people too. So when they got here, and this is how the story disseminated from this pennypack area. So all the things tie together. Orland, the connector stream that runs between this area that connects the Wissahick into the pennypack, that allowed them entry, following the artifact trails up through the hills. The descriptions by the first French of the people matching the description of the Swedish people along the stream from the Upper Moreland Library's archives. The fact that they were described as being adorned in silver and gold by the Dutch settlers along the stream. Oddly enough, they also said that they told us not to go into the hills, for there was a race of chinless, flat-headed, hairy monsters that would eat them. Maybe these are some of these carvings of these heads in gold and silver. Maybe there was some ancient people different from us that were up in these hills. Or maybe it was just a convenient story to keep nosy settlers away from your silver and gold mines, that you had knowledge handed down to you from your ancestors of the area that were mining it before you. Remember, they were in the area for 1,000 years before the Europeans came and contacted them, so these were all well-known mines, and they've been utilizing them for a long time up to that point. I believe that there was a settlement close by to the stream due to different things that can be pointed out on a Google Earth of the area. So there's a lot more to come from this, but the main mine location is in an area along the Pennypack. There are several entrances, and there could also be several access points that are underwater, actually in the creek, that would go open up in because there are places in that creek that I've taken a weight and a line and dropped, and they go down. They just don't stop. They're just pits to nowhere. These dark pits in the stream, these dark pools. But the sheer amount of artifacts leads to a ton of activity over a long time period, and this is where these mines were, and it's the only logical area in Pennsylvania for there to be silver and gold geologically. The Pennypack cuts directly through the silver and limestone and lead deposits as they meet up with the quartz and the agates. And in between these two layers is where all the metals like gold and silver and stuff get trapped. And there's also a couple areas coming out of the one collapsed entrance where this stream, small artificial stream, probably from groundwater that's filled up in a cavern that's been caved in, is pulling a bunch of silver with it, because it appears as black sand or super black dirt, and and nothing grows in it, and it's only in this one spot coming out. It's just pulling all that, limestone breaks down really easy when water flows through it. It's soft, and the water pulls the silver out. And silver is unstable, does not exist well as a nugget or bind itself together in nature. It usually has to run through really white quartz, where the quartz line gets real like milky, right where it almost becomes the limestone, the transition point. But it's all here geologically, and there is so much stuff in these deposits that I've taken 1/millionth of the things that I could have taken that I left behind. I've taken some stuff over time, but there's so much of it. And I have a bunch of pottery that's Susquehannock that is in this video as well. The pottery is super important. I mean, I found some really old Susquehannock, absolutely Susquehannock pottery, which is huge, alongside of these pipes and these old spoons. There's evidence they're trading and meeting in these places, or fighting or battling. A lot of evidence of war, conflict, strife, industry, domestication. And I'm only just an amateur in this field, and I'm trying to bring light my finds and connect them to the story and fill in some of the missing pieces of the area and how significant this area was to the French and Indian War, the Beaver Wars, and then extremely important during the Revolutionary War. We'll get into how Washington was in this area heavily at another time period, because it's the next stage in the history of this area. But it was originally an Algonquin stronghold, and the Susquehanna and the Lenape. Susquehanna pushed out the Lenape. They were actually allied with the Algonquins for a while, because the Beaver Wars were going on. There's a lot of broken and then made allegiances, and the silver mines, they weren't far from a town called Acadia, and they were very well hidden.